What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Bulls Latest. Your host, Matt Johnson here. Wanted to kick today's show off by looking at a trade scenario I put together, and it involves the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls here. The Heat in this scenario would be sending guard Terry Rozier, prospect Pelle Larsson, who's another young guard, and a 2027 second-round pick to Chicago. In return, Miami would get back Nikola Vucevic and Ayo Dosunmu. Now, let's jump into this trade and what the perspective is on both sides of this deal. You have Terry Rozier at 30 years old, and this is from Miami's perspective. He's coming off a turbulent season in Miami. After being acquired from Charlotte to bolster their backcourt, he ended up averaging 11 points per game to go along with 4 rebounds and 3 assists per game. He had inefficient shooting splits there. He was later moved to the bench and became entangled in a league investigation related to gambling activity. That was covered on a national level. It was a very big story in the NBA there, and he was in the news for all the wrong reasons for a long time. Though he was recently cleared by the NBA of this investigation, however, he has not been cleared federally. So the federal investigation is ongoing, and he will continue to have to deal with that. That could be the major downside to adding a 30-year-old Terry Rozier to a Bulls roster for a couple of years. As far as his role in Miami, it diminished pretty quickly, and then he is on an expiring $26 million contract, so he is considered a trade chip in a lot of scenarios here. The proposed deal would give the Miami Heat front-court reinforcements and Vooch and a two-time All-Star on an expiring deal as well. Miami has shown interest, and I looked into this, in shifting Bam Adebayo to power forward in certain lineups, and Vooch's shooting and rebounding could help facilitate that change for them, and that's kind of why I linked this deal to Nikola Vucevic working for Miami's side of things. The team also added rookie Khalil Ware in the draft and recently signed Norman Powell, signaling their openness to additional adjustments here. And I think when you're Miami, adding guys like Nikola Vucevic and Ayo Dosunmu, who I'll get into next here, would make a lot of sense. You have Ayo at 25 years of age, a guy I've talked about a ton, and he continues to be popular in a lot of trade talks. He would bring defensive versatility to this Miami team and some positional depth to Miami's backcourt there. He's a 2021 second-round pick. He's become a reliable rotation guard in Chicago over the years. He's set to enter the final year of his deal. He's going to earn $7.5 million this year. He's been a major talking point for me throughout this show, and I think Miami is just the latest spot that makes some sense for him in this. Now, let's switch gears to the Bulls' perspective here. Now, a lot of you guys are going to question why the heck would they deal those two guys for a guy like Terry Rozier and a young guard who we don't really know much about. Chicago's been weighing options with Vooch since the trade deadline. They've yet to commit to a long-term direction with him. At 34 years old, he's remained productive. His contract's expiring, and the team is looking to make incremental changes. The Bulls may be motivated to recoup value while clearing future cap space, and this is just another move that is a possibility in my eyes. Ayo, like I said, has drawn interest from multiple teams. Including him in a package could enhance Chicago's ability to extract additional assets from this, and that's the major key. If you could move a guy like Ayo Dosunmu and get as many assets back as possible, I think this would be a win-win in my eyes here. And, with Rozier on an expiring deal, Larsson, who's a rookie guard on a team-friendly contract, and a future second-round pick, they would also allow, this would allow Chicago to kind of dip into that recent trend there after they traded Lonzo Ball to Cleveland earlier this month. They have yet to re-sign Josh Giddy, as I continue to talk about. That's a major pillar that's yet to fall there. So it kind of allows you to have, this proposed deal is a bridge option at guard while increasing financial flex heading into the 2026 offseason. So that's a major part of Chicago. I know Terry Rozier is not all that appealing at 30 years old, but it kind of creates a bridge there with the uncertainty at guard for Chicago. And that's where I wanted to head on this discussion from the Bulls' perspective. I think there's no indication that formal talks between the Heat and Bulls are underway. The proposed structure reflects the needs and motivations of both teams, and that's why I wanted to put together this scenario for you guys. Miami is seeking to retool after an underwhelming year, while Chicago appears to be reshaping its core and preparing for long-term cap relief starting next offseason. So I just think it's an interesting scenario here, a fun one to look at. We'll continue to monitor if this continues to gain any kind of steam or shapes itself into any kind of deal here, but we'll keep eyes on that as the days and weeks progress here. I wanted to shift gears here and talk about a Bulls executive that spoke at the NBA Summer League in Vegas. It wasn't notified who the executive was, however, in this report, but in this rumor, the Bulls have been said to want to keep both Giddy and Kobe White. NBA reporter Keith Smith of Spot Track spoke to a Chicago Bulls exec at the Summer League to get his thoughts on Giddy and Kobe White. And here are a few quotes from that Bulls executive here. And quote, "We want to get a deal done with Josh. He is as important of a player as we have. We see him as a foundational player for us. I hope we can find a deal that makes sense for us and him that will allow us to be together for a long time." So, it's not all that surprising that this Bulls executive speaks of that when it comes to Josh Giddy. Like I've talked about, it's only a matter of time before this deal gets done. It's just it's all the terms and the financials involved in it that continue to be the issue here. So I just think this executive for the Bulls speaking to Keith Smith on this and stating what he did about Josh Giddy in particular kind of just signifies the motivation to want to keep Josh around. So I'm not all that surprised. When it comes to Kobe White, I thought this was a little bit more interesting. In quote here, he stated, "The contract is what it is. We probably can't extend him because the rules don't allow for us to pay him enough. But we want Kobe to be a Bull for a long time. He knows how we feel about him." Again, of no surprise here, I think Kobe White is loved by this Bulls organization. What he's provided since they drafted him out of North Carolina, he's been one of their more consistent and productive players. What's interesting about this is that the Bulls are accepting the fact that they can't extend him because of not being able to pay him enough. What does this mean heading into the 2026 offseason if he sticks around? Is he going to warrant that kind of contract? Are the Bulls going to play hardball like they have with Josh Giddy up to this point? It'll be interesting to see how that kind of goes there in terms of Kobe White in particular. But I just thought some interesting notes there and quotes from a Bulls executive in the NBA Summer League destination in Las Vegas over the last couple of weeks here. Going into a guy, speaking of the NBA Summer League, and a very strong finish to his performance in the NBA Summer League, Noah Senge. I wanted to offer a fresh perspective on him. I initially, and throughout past episodes here, have deemed him as a project, and I think that when you look at him and how young he is, he's a guy who, at 18 years of age, is going to be a developmental piece. However, could he be a day one starter? Noah has been and never been totally NBA ready in the pre-draft process, never been looked at as that. That being said, with the solid Summer League performance, I think he's positioned himself to make a leap into the Bulls starting lineup pretty quickly when you look at all things considered. The Bulls Bleacher Report's draft expert Jonathan Wasserman noted a few traits that should get him the starting role. Senge has a knack for putting himself in position to make and finish plays from off the ball. He'll generate the majority of his offense by running the floor, cutting, crashing the glass, and hitting spot-up threes. And this Wasserman's a very solid source when it comes to looking at draft talent and what they're going to provide here going forward. Spoke very highly of Noah Senge and that his possibility to become a starter here. I think for a team that's slightly stuck in no man's land, the flashes of driving, shot-making versatility, and improvisation should sway Chicago to let the rookie play through mistakes. And I agree with the ability to be able to plug him in and play him, allow him to develop through the tough times in his early stages of his NBA career there. So we'll continue to look at Noah Senge as the offseason rolls on and different scenarios that could slide him into this Bulls lineup moving forward. But something interesting there from Wasserman I wanted to touch upon there in terms of an article that I found to be interesting. And this was an article by ESPN. They ranked the biggest roster mistakes since 2020. I wanted to end today's show looking at this. The Bulls came in, and this was ranked from, least detrimental mistakes to worst, and the Bulls were ranked at 9, and I'm not all that surprised. Their worst decision to this point has the Bulls at number 9 because of the trade that brought Nikola Vucevic to Chicago in 2021. This was the first move of Arturas Karnisovas' tenure as the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. This sent Orlando Wendell Carter Jr. and 2 future first-round picks, both of which landed in the lottery. As we all remember, those picks resulted in Franz Wagner and Jet Howard heading to Orlando. And now you look at Orlando, they've become a perennial team in the Eastern Conference. They've added Desmond Bane in this offseason, so they're reshaping and kind of pushing their way towards the top of the conference, while the Bulls are still stuck in this middle ground. So I think when you look at the Bulls being ranked at 9, it's kind of justified in a painful way there for Bulls fans. But Vooch was in the middle of a career season in Orlando when he was traded. Vooch's defensive difficulties put a firm ceiling on any team that he's on, and I think that's something that when ESPN highlighted this, I thought it to be a very, when you look at the outstanding perspective of Nikola Vucevic and what he's brought to Chicago. Yeah, he's had some great years, including this year, this past season. He was very productive, but it's kind of put a cap on what Chicago can do. And I think that trade, considering what you gave up and how Orlando looks with what the assets brought to that organization, it's a painful one to look back on, landing the Bulls at 9 on that list. Obviously, I thought it was interesting, but it was funny. The number 1 team that came in on that list was the Dallas Mavericks in trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers. However, as we see, the Dallas Mavericks are positioned to be a powerhouse with landing Cooper Flagg in the lottery. So the Bulls came in at 9 on that list of the biggest roster mistakes since 2020. Not surprised at all. They've become kind of, unfortunately, a national laughingstock when it comes to the way this NBA franchise has orchestrated things, and one can only hope that the Bulls are taking steps to kind of get out of this rut as an organization. Some of the moves this offseason have you even questioning that and their ability to kind of escape this lull. So we'll have to continue to push on and see what this Bulls team can produce and come away with moving forward. I think we'll continue to have plenty of chatter when it comes to Ayo Dosunmu and Nikola Vucevic in future weeks here, with that Miami Heat scenario and a trade being the latest that I wanted to take a look at. Let me know if that's a deal you guys want no part of. Is it something you have interest in? What players do you want to see the Bulls flip Nikola Vucevic and Ayo Dosunmu for? Do you think Kobe White will end up being on the move at some point? I know a lot of you have expressed the passion to want to keep him in Chicago. I'm in that same camp. I love Kobe White in Chicago, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what assets you can get for who. So, again, I want to thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Bulls Latest today, and we will see you all next time.